The machine in Banjo-Kazooie does not have a religious undertone in my view. It doesn't revive people from the dead, which sort of implies spirits and ghosts, as Banjo-Kazooie does, of course, showing us how characters can become spirits. The machine in Banjo-Kazooie is, of course, supernatural in the way any of the fairy tale elements of this game could be. It's a machine that transforms the body, but in this case, the living body. It doesn't touch the boundary between life and death like the Banjo-Tooie machine. It just affects life, changes its form. It doesn't have a name like a person, isn't called a person. Furthermore, Gruntilda herself needs to get herself involved in the process. She needs to get inside. The game shows us her getting inside the machine, sort of tight and seemingly uncomfortable in her position. She suffers. She needs to get involved in this process and suffer the consequences. She loses control too. She can't control the machine. She needs to surrender her control to Klungo, who operates. So, the difference between these machines is this, to me. The Banjo-Kazooie machine is all about Grunty having to get herself in the same place as Tooty. They're both in the machine. Both have to lock themselves in. They're both suffering from it in some way. Grunty surrenders to it. In Banjo-Tooie, there is no loss of control. Grunty is a controller, always in control of this machine from the comfort of her lair. There is another issue too. Death is different in both cases. I think because in the first game, death is something Grunty is trying to slow down. The idea is that the machine will make her young and suck the youth out of Tooty. Tooty is said to then become old as a direct consequence of the process. It's very similar to Banjo-Tooie. It's a machine that sucks vitality and brings it back to Grunty. But it is implied that the reason Grunty wants to do this is, therefore, to avoid growing old. She wants to avoid death, avoid old age. Tooty is younger, so she wants Tooty's life. Here, death is an enemy. It is avoided by this process to keep Grunty young and alive. However, in the second game, Grunty is not really trying to avoid death. She's dead. There's nothing to avoid. It's about getting life back, becoming alive again. Death is no longer a feared object, something bad that Grunty wants to avoid from happening. No, Grunty is already there. So it's not about prevention. It's about complete cure, curing death, renewing death. In that way, it is spiritual. It's about a miracle. The game further illuminates this religious side, as far as I can tell, because the image of a ray falling from the sky and magically transforming the world is used also with the Temple of Jiggy Wiggy. The fact that the game is centered around a series of worlds that are opened by a temple's union with the divine creature sort of gives this game a spiritual flavor. We have a dead character who is going to be revived from death, a theme typical of mythology and spirituality, and a temple that opens different worlds. We're carried through these worlds towards the final goal of bringing back to life our dead. So, interestingly, this sort of ties to this idea that I was suggesting, that Banjo here is someone who dominates Kazooie. Kazooie in this game is like a religious machine. She is a machine that does superhuman stuff, more so, in my opinion, than in the first game, which is already fairy tale-like and magical to begin with. In Tooie, we get Kazooie transforming into a dragon, a creature of supernatural ability. She is a torpedo, a machine. She breathes ice eggs, fire, etc. She really extends her capacity to do stuff that is superhuman. And Banjo barely does any supernatural stuff in the game, without counting the shamanistic transformations. He behaves in a fairly naturalistic way. Kazooie acts in ways that transcend our idea of what is material. Just like Grunty uses a machine who is a person name, Bob, to do things that transcend life, such as revive. Banjo also uses Kazooie like a magical wand, a creature that is a person who does things for him he's not capable of doing and that transcend material limitations we commonly know of. Curiously, Grunty then becomes a sort of mirror image to Banjo. She too is someone who is in control in this game, as Banjo. Then in the first machine, Grunty needs to squish herself in. She is just as much an object being experimented on by the machine as Tooty. In Tooie, it seems the ray is fairly painless. It just shoots life at stuff and brings it back to life. Presumably that's what Grunty would do. But in Kazooie, Grunty needs to get into the electric machine, as Tooty does. Grunty is in some way collaborating with this process. She's not in control. So she has to surrender to it. It might be painful. It might not make her benefit from it the way she benefits from power in Tooie's machine. This sort of echoes my idea that Kazooie is collaborating with Banjo also, that Banjo is not using Kazooie like he does in Tooie, but instead he's just collaborating with her. They feel more like two people collaborating to pull off special moves, special jumping moves, special flying, etc. Banjo provides the legs and arms, Kazooie provides the wings, her pecking, of course her talons too, but it feels more like they're doing moves that imply they're both sort of in control, like they're doing complicated yoga poses together, something. Another issue that emerges is this. The second machine changes a state from dead to alive. This is a sudden jump from one state to another one. It isn't presented as a gradual change from dead to alive. The hope is that the machine will transform something dead into something alive, not into a little bit alive or slightly dead. Material limitations of the body which have made it dead are transcended. We are now no longer limited by this body's capabilities in material space. We are transcending matter. In the first machine, what is happening is that we're gradually transforming the body from one state to another. We want it to be a little bit younger, a little bit older, a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. Grunty wants to be younger. She doesn't want to transcend matter. She wants matter to simply be transformed. And this can happen in small increments if necessary. What we want is to adapt the body so that it looks more like what other people want or expect us to look like. So Grunty wants to be more like the kind of person the world would find beautiful, represented in this game by Tooty. I find something interesting here, because what it means is that what Grunty wants is not really to transform her material body. She wants her material body to be that of a desired person. The key here is the desire, the way people will desire her, hopefully like Tooty, the way they desire her. She wants to become Tooty somehow. This means she wants, maybe, to become another self, a self that is Tooty's. The goal is to transcend spirit, not matter, to become another person. In Tooie, the desire isn't to become a different person, but to be the person you were. You were this person died, and now you want to be that person. The limitations of the material world have made your soul be dead, but you want to transcend matter so that your soul can be living. In Banjo-Kazooie, the issue is that the limitations of spirituality, the limitations of not only your soul, but also how your soul is interacted with by others, and how you interact with others, all this relational aspect is limited. You wish relationship were different, that your relationship with the world were different, and the world's relationship with you. This limitation in the world of relationship, or of the social world, of the soul, has made your body dead. Your body is dead in the eyes of the world, in the eyes of others or yourself. Your body doesn't exist in the eyes of others. It's alive, but it's not existent. This limitation of the spiritual world can be transcended so that your body can be alive again, alive as in existing in the social world, taken to be a person worthy of being treated ethically. So the first game is about transcending the soul, and Tooie is about transcending matter. In the first game, it is the spirit world that is dead. The material world is all too living. Your spirit wants more life. In the second game, it is the body or matter which wants to be alive. The spirit is simply waiting. It's there and good. Death is alive, and the body is dead. In the first game, death, the spirit world, is dead. In the first game, you want to stop being yourself and be another. Grunty wants to be Tooty. Her life itself is now unbearable. She can't live. In Banjo-Tooie, Grunty wants to stop being another. She is not herself anymore. She is a bony person she doesn't particularly like being. She prefers to be herself. Death has become unbearable. She can't stand being in death. She wants to be herself now. It could be that the first game, then, is a process of moving from life to death, from being yourself to being another. And Tui is from being another, or dead as yourself, to being yourself, becoming alive after being dead. I also suggested that the first game is perhaps a process of rising up the spiral mountain towards the spiral center, the very middle. Tui might be a process of descending the spiral mountain to its outer reaches, to the island beyond the spiral center, outer. If so, Tui might be about a process of descent which leads to life, and the first game about a process of ascent which leads to death. These two spirals lead to confrontations with Grunty. The first game leads us to Grunty in the top of the tower, and the second game also leads us to a battle with Grunty at the top of the tower. These towers are different. The first one involves a passage through a furnace fun, and the second one through a tower of tragedy, both of which are game shows hosted by Grunty. I perceive here that the second one, Tower of Tragedy, takes place in a sort of pipes room. It's a room filled with pipes of different kinds. This is inside the Cauldron Keep, which is itself also decorated with a lot of tubing and pipes on the walls. These pipes could carry all sorts of things, but I would suggest it probably would carry something that is flowy enough to flow through them, so a liquid or maybe gases. Thematically, however, I think it fits well with the other quiz show. The other quiz show, for example, is filled with things evoking fire. It's fire on the walls, fire on the floor. The name of the place is Furnace, too. There's a contrast between these two quizzes, for example, in the colours. Tower of Tragedy is mostly cool colours, blue, green. Furnace Fun is hot colours, of course red, orange. It's not huge evidence, but I feel this makes me say there is a contrast here between water and fire. Tower of Tragedy is a cool, dark place with pipes, and Furnace Fun is hot and, in this way, it might be that the first game is fire, and the second game is water, if I were to look at the themes. The second game descends. The spiral descends down, in my interpretation, since we're not heading towards its center anymore. And water descends too. It seeps into any cracks it needs to, and descends lower. Fire, then, ascends. Flames go up into the sky, they burn upwards, and the first game in my analysis is about ascending the spiral as it leads us to the top, the center of the spiral mountain, going up as the flames might go up. A further reason why I think one goes up and the other down is that the Furnace Fun evokes fun or enjoyment, which is usually something seen as high spirits, goes up. Tragedy in the Tower of Tragedy is not fun. It's depression or sad, something that goes down, is down and descending down. So spirals go up towards fun and down towards depression. For instance, in Banjo Kazooie, the path up Spiral Mountain is followed by a fun melody. In Banjo Tooie, we desert Spiral Mountain. We go away from it, away from the spiral, by a sad version of that same melody. A happy version leads us up towards the center, and a sad version leads us away towards the fringes of the spiral, its limits. As well, as we said, the spiral goes up towards its center, and it goes down towards its outer limits, signaled by the fact that the outgoing spiral is the way down, but furthermore because Banjo Tooie leads us away from Spiral Mountain by entering a dark cave into the earth, a descent. The spiral goes from one state to its opposite. It goes from hot to cold, for example. The examples we've been showing are, I think, of opposites that are travelled to from the spiral. The spiral goes from one side to the other. It seems various different states are associated to each spiral, like slow to the bottom side and fast to the top, life to the top, death to the bottom, water to the bottom, fire to the top. The spiral is a path. You as a character walk up or down it to reach different states. For instance, Most cases of spirals in this game, or maybe all of them, are paths. They are paths to travel up or down an object. Mumbo's Mountain has a spiral mountain path. Treasure Trove Cove has a spiral up the Lighthouse Mountain and a spiral tower path. Click Clock Wood has a path that sort of slants upwards in a spiral up the tree, albeit not so obviously. If any of these meanings have any sense, then a spiral is something that travels between two states. You can travel up towards one state or down towards another. Hot, cold, fun, sad. So they are a journey, a mode of transport. They are a transportation method, a portal, a door. I'll try and recap the different associations I'm tentatively perceiving in each path. The path towards the center of the spiral is associated to going up towards the mountain. The path outside of the spiral is associated to descending down the mountain. Towards the spiral is about Grunty wanting to be different, someone else. Out of the spiral is about her wanting to be herself, to stop being this new body she's become, the bone skeleton. So far, we've got upwards and being different, next to the down movement being non-different, being the same. Upward seems to be about fire, ascending to the fireplace, and downward seems to be about going towards the water. It might make sense to associate going upwards with fire, since fire tends to go upwards, to rise in flame, and so to associate water with downwards motions, since water does go downwards and seep into the depths. These are my associations. The game doesn't reference the natural behavior of water or fire, but I found this is an association one could make. We also associated the upward spiral with fun, furnace fun, and the downwards one with Tower of Tragedy, sad mood. Also, the spiral, as I read it, gets shorter and shorter rotations the more you ascend. And again, in an intuitive read, I say this means fastness. The shorter the loops are, the faster you move up them if your speed were the same in the upwards path. The same applies to the downward motion, but in reverse. A speed that stays equal down this path would take much longer to go round one single round, when the rounds of the spiral get further and further apart, wider, longer to travel down. Intuitively again, this would track nicely onto fun and non-fun. It's the character that most moves that gets affected in Banjo-Kazooie. Tooty. She is hopping and moving constantly with a desire to go on an adventure. Her character animations suggest she's constantly moving, even when she's still. She's the one who we rescue in this game. In Banjo-Tooie, it's the character who least moves, and moves the slowest, who dies. Bottles is the one we rescue this time. Happiness and sadness don't necessarily associate to lack of movement and movement, but I feel this game might be putting these two ways of being into contrast. Bottle seems to be someone with certain laments and complaints. Tooty seems to be someone who is ready to enjoy the adventure. It seems joy is what is associated to the first game and to movement, a fast movement furthermore, and a slow movement is what the game associates to melancholy. But Banjo-Tooie is about slow movement, sadness. Banjo-Kazooie is about happiness, fastness. Like fire, sparkling and flickering. Water, on the other hand, unless it is falling from somewhere or shooting out, is accumulated in whatever body of water it can find as it descends, so it tends towards creation of big, still bodies of water, unless wind moves it around, other environmental conditions, etc. Fire is permanently in a state of frenzy, moving around unless it is stopped by environmental factors. After all, slowness, if it descends down a spiral that is permanently slowing it down, will eventually, in theory, or in an abstract sense, tend towards absolute stillness. Again, if the game is associating death to our spiral going down in Banjo-Tooie, then stillness here could be a lack of movement due to being not alive. Vice versa for the upwards path, getting faster and faster until it is permanently moving.